A wave of tributes pouring in as world leaders remember the enduring legacy of Pope Francis. The 88-year-old passed away after months of illness. And you're looking at live pictures from St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City. Leaders worldwide remembering Pope Francis for his humility and compassion. The pontiff was known for his bold stance on issues ranging from climate change and discrimination to global conflicts. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. lauding Pope Francis as a man that led with, quote, a heart open to all. Taiwanese President William Lai noting the pontiff's commitment to peace, global solidarity and caring for those in need. The Vatican is one of only 12 countries to maintain formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi remembering Pope Francis as a beacon of compassion, humility and spiritual courage. The bell sounding in St. Peter's Square upon the pontiff's passing. Many have been gathering there to mark the occasion. He was elected in 2013 as the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church. His final public appearance yesterday saw him greeting thousands of worshippers for Easter Sunday Mass. And Berna Bernal joins us live from the Philippines. Of course, the Philippines, a bedrock of Catholicism, with more than 80% of the population there practicing this faith. Berna, how are Catholics in the Philippines remembering the pontiff?
A revolutionary, a real progressive, and a shepherd for the Catholic faithful. These are just some of the praises and words of admiration pouring in for the late Argentine pontiff, distinguished for his departure from the level of conservatism that his predecessors were known for. Now, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, or CBCP President Cardinal Pablo Virgilio David, has called on the Catholic faithful to pray for the repose of Pope Francis, the man they call Holy Father, and called on Catholic churches nationwide to ring their bells. The Manila Cathedral will be holding a Mass Tuesday morning local time, and we're here in Quiapo Church, one of the most visited Catholic churches across the Philippines. And I spoke to churchgoers here who said they were mourning the passing of the Holy Father, but they're also anticipating who will be replacing him. Now, the Archbishop of Manila, Cardinal Jose Advincula, referred to Pope Francis as Lolo Kiko, a combination of his nickname as well as the Filipino term of endearment for grandfather. And he said that Lolo Kiko reminds Filipinos that the church must be close to the poor. This, of course, has resonated among Filipinos across the years. The self-rated poverty of Filipinos, according to polling firm Social Weather Stations, as of March 2025 at 52%, higher than the 46% a year earlier. Filipino sociologist Athena Presto also weighing in on the Pope's death, saying that his example of keeping the doors open, so to speak, is providing hope, given that a lot of institutions, she says, are moving towards more and more conservatism. Recall, of course, Pope Francis saying that he sees the church as a field hospital after battle.
All right, Bona, this Pope, perhaps more than others in recent memory, known for his wanting to march to the beat of his own drum. So you mentioned that constant fight with more conservative factions of the Catholic Church, and that must have happened in the Philippines as well. How are the people of the Philippines looking at this Pope who wanted reform, who wanted to bring the church into the modern age?
The image of Pope Francis that has stuck with many Filipinos is him under the rain, wearing a yellow poncho, the same poncho that others were wearing in Tacloban City in central Philippines, which was the epicenter of Typhoon Haiyan. And he addressed the survivors of the typhoon there just 2 years after that. One of the most powerful tropical cyclones to ever hit land, wiped out entire communities in that area and claimed thousands of lives. So he is a representation of mercy and compassion for many Filipinos. He also addressed young people during his 2015 visit here, saying that the young people should not just know how to accumulate information, but to use that information to practice their faith, to use that information and let that information bear fruit.
Thanks. Bernal there reporting live from Manila. And Leong Wai-kit joins us right here in studio. Wai-kit, you followed the Pope literally on his Asia-Pacific tour last year. Now, we frequently talk to you, and it's about politics, leaders, global leaders, and it's always red lines, hard lines, bottom lines, because that's politics for you. Now, this was a more specifically religious, as was in inverted commas, type assignment for you, and something quite different as well. You look at leaders all the time, effective, not so effective leaders. Now, this is a religious leader. How did you see Pope Francis as a leader?
Well, I am a non-expert. I'm not a Vatican reporter, so I'm looking from the outside. And in my interaction with him, as well as my observation in the 2 weeks of traveling with him, one word comes to mind. He is a fearless leader. Not fearless in the context as you shared earlier, Wesu, about his bold stance on issues, but fearless in the face of death. When we were in Jakarta, there were actual death threats made against Pope Francis. Of course, the news broke only after we left Jakarta, but while we were there, we didn't feel that anything was different. I mean, of course, there were security details given to any world leader, but he was doing his business as usual because he was so accessible to people. He drove around with his car window wound down. People could go up to him. And it doesn't take a security expert to tell you that this is a security nightmare because anybody can just go up to him. So despite knowing that there were death threats, he functioned as usual. But death threats are not unusual for the Pope. In fact, he did say that if he were to be assassinated, let it be painless. And perhaps that is a human side of this very spiritual leader, if you will.
All right, the human side. Now, I'm going to be cynical here and say that if anyone should not fear death, it's likely to be someone who has religious faith, as the Pope necessarily would do. But the human side, to actually practice what you say and what you believe, that is rather more unusual. On the human side, you saw that. I was asking you earlier, how long exactly did you have with the Pope? I think you spoke to him on the plane on which you were both traveling. 30 seconds. But in that 30 seconds, you saw the man.
You know, you can form an impression in just 30 seconds. My first impression of him when he walked out of the papal plane was he was cheeky because there were Vatican reporters whom he's familiar with. And when he spotted one familiar face, he literally did this, right? A very comical salute. And then you see other sides of him. When we were going back from Singapore, back to the Vatican, there was a press conference. And he was wheeled out to the area. He was facing us. He was on a wheelchair. Now, I did not see this because my view was blocked. But my cameraman, Ashraf, he saw it. When we were in the plane, there was a slight turbulence. So everybody put on their safety belts. He was in a wheelchair. He had no safety belt. So what he did was he took the microphone's cable and playfully acted as he was a safety belt. We talked about it afterwards and we laughed. Snippets like that tell you that this man is very cheeky, very human. And in my interaction with him in the 30 seconds, like I said, it was a private moment. I shared something with him. It was in English, of course. He had a translator doing live translations, but he was looking at me. There was this human connection. You know when you're talking to people and they're spacing out. He wasn't. And you know he's talking to so many people. And when I shared that with him, the translation was done, he said to me, thank you. He patted my hand and said, thank you. And I think that 30 seconds really was enough to tell me the human side of this spiritual leader.
All right, thanks so much for sharing something that most of us in this life will not be able to experience. Leong Wai-kit there. And still ahead, we have more on the passing of Pope Francis. Leo-Martin Angelo R Ocampo, now he's assistant professor from the Institute of Religion, Center for Theology, Religious Studies and Ethics at the University of Santo Tomas. He joins us live from Manila. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Dr. Ocampo. I was just hearing from my colleague there, a very human side to this man, but a man who lived by his beliefs. Now, it's very easy to have beliefs, but you saw in the Philippines actual policy, actual conduct that reflected that this man had beliefs and he was going to act on them.
Well, most definitely. I still remember how he visited us here in the Philippines in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan. No? He wanted so much to visit right after it struck, but it took him almost a year before he could come. And it was such a powerful scene seeing the Pope in Leyte itself. It was raining, there was a storm, raining very hard. No? Actually, the organizers did not want him to push through with the visit anymore, but he insisted. And he told the people, "Here I am late, but here I am." And the presence of the Pope there, right there, I'm happy that you have the picture, in his yellow raincoat, drenched as the people were, no, is, I think, one of the most memorable images of Pope Francis that we will ever have. No? A Pope who is drenched with the people. And it also reminds me of another scene where we see him drenched. No? During the pandemic, when everyone was on lockdown, he walked in the center of an empty St. Peter's Square and he prayed with us and for all of us. Now, all of us were distancing and he led, I think, practically the whole world, no, in prayer for the pandemic. And it was such, I think, a powerful scene. And I don't think there's anything like that, no, ever recorded on at least on religious, as far as religious broadcasting is concerned. So you have the Pope in an empty St. Peter's Square, but you have millions from all over the world joining him in that broadcast. So
Dr.
yeah,
Ocampo, of
those
course,
would be one of our
unforgettable moments. But he also made, and you talk about first time, another first time, the first time the Philippines had a cardinal that the Pope picked from Mindanao. In fact, 3 of the 5 living cardinals in the Philippines right now, they are appointed by Pope Francis, and 3 are not from the usual centers of Manila and Cebu, and that counts for something in the Philippines.
Yes, all of the cardinals that he appointed. Now, before these 3 cardinals, all of our previous cardinals were either from Manila or from Cebu, or they were appointed to the Curia. But here, Pope Francis appointed first Cardinal Quevedo from Mindanao, no, the Archbishop of Cotabato, rather a small archdiocese. It's not even the biggest archdiocese in Mindanao. No? And then another Cardinal Advincula, then the Archbishop of Capiz. Again, it's not in the center of the Visayas. It's an archdiocese, yes, but certainly not one of the biggest ones. No. And then, of course, Cardinal David, who hails from not even an archdiocese, just a diocese. No? And all of these are very significant because, as the Pope says, we have to shift the focus not only of the church, but all of us should shift the focus away from the center and pay attention more to the peripheries. No? That's one of his favorite words. We must look at the fringes of society because that is where we must bring, as it were, the gospel, the light of Jesus Christ. So he really pays attention. And I think worldwide, no, the Philippines is certainly on the peripheries. We may be one of the largest Catholic countries in terms of population, but we are such a small country in the world, no? And yet the Pope pays so much attention to us. No? I remember in one of his...
Dr. Ocampo, pardon me for cutting in, but someone who is not afraid to challenge cherished tradition would also expect to be challenged on several fronts. And in fact, he was, both by those who were more conservative, who did not like him taking away what they thought was long-standing tradition, and also by those who are more progressive and think he should go even further. But for you, that is actually testament to him.
Yes, that's true. I think that's a good sign. No? If you get the flack of both extremes, no, the traditionalists are not satisfied, and then also the progressive ones are not satisfied, then you must be somewhere in the middle, trying to pull everything together. And that is what a pontiff is. No? The word pontiff in Latin, pontifex, means bridge builder. And you cannot be a bridge if you're only on one end. No? You have to be a bridge between people. You have to be somewhere in the middle, trying to bridge precisely the gap between different views. And Pope Francis is a master of that, I think. No? That is where his discernment really comes in. Well, for example, in his stance towards those in irregular marriages and even, for example, same-sex marriages, he does not change doctrine. No, he is very faithful in that sense. He does not change the moral teaching of the church. And yet, he is able to institute policies that are more welcoming, that would express people to people in these situations that they are not banned from the church, no, that they are welcome to be part of the church. I like, for example, no, in a recent document, he would encourage pastors to bless these couples without blessing or approving of their irregular situation. He would encourage the pastors to bless them,
All right,
to make
thanks so
them
much.
feel the welcome of God.
All right,
the
thanks so much
church.
for
Yes.
making us understand what Pope Francis has done actually within the church, religious moves there. Thank you, Leo-Martin Angelo R Ocampo, Assistant Professor from the Institute of Religion, Center for Theology, Religious Studies and Ethics at the University of Santo Tomas.